Welcome, dear listener, to a podcast episode that will ignite your passion for self development and help you create a fulfilling life. I am beyond excited to introduce our extraordinary guest, Aleana Kali, the visionary behind Brands Are Alive. Aleana's expertise goes far beyond traditional business knowledge. While she possesses a wealth of experience in e commerce, branding, and marketing, her true calling lies in empowering individuals like yourself to find joy and fulfillment in their work. As a fellow artist, she intimately understands the challenges and struggles we face in a world that often prioritizes mainstream marketing advice over authenticity. Regardless of whether you are an aspiring artist, a creative entrepreneur, or simply someone yearning for great fulfillment in your career, this podcast is tailor made for you. Join us in this conversation with the brilliant founder of Brands Are Alive, Aleana Kali, as she imparts her wisdom and illuminates the path to self discovery and personal growth. And without further ado, let's dive right in. All right. So thank you so much, Aleana. You are such an incredible inspiration on LinkedIn and on YouTube, and I'm super excited to have you. And I really want people to know more about you. One of the ways I like to open it up is for you to start off on naming who you are and what you do, and then we can start talking about authenticity.
Sure. Thanks for that lovely intro. My name is Aleana Kali. I am founder at Brands Are Alive. What can I say? I am still struggling to find a label that I would want to be, happy to own fully, because I feel like this is an intersection of so many parts of myself. By trade, my experience is in business and marketing and branding. I did marketing consulting for about 10 years. I used to have my own consulting practice. Had a couple of e-commerce businesses back in the day, but what I've been doing the last couple of years, and which is my life's work really, this is what matters to me more than anything, is helping people who are conscious, creative, sensitive souls, or soulful, if you will, find that intersection between doing what they love most and what brings them life, being fully self-expressed and resonating with the market and making money. Basically, not being a starving artist, but not selling out either, right? So I feel like that's a struggle that a lot of us, creative and sensitive and spiritual people experience, where we want to be authentic, we want to be our full self-expression, we want to follow our, desires and that sort of thing. But then the reality hits and it's like, okay, well, how are you going to make this quote unquote realistic? And the mainstream marketing advice just doesn't seem to care about those parts of ourselves. It just tells us to just do stuff, do X to get Y result. And it's like, yeah, I know that works, but that doesn't feel aligned. So how do I get those results? How can I make money and be quote unquote successful in those, mainstream terms without having to do all the things that are normally associated with that path? So that's the place where I live. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for opening that up, because as you were speaking, I was just thinking that you touched upon this idea of living your full potential, your authentic self. And sometimes as you were working in marketing, you feel like it wasn't the case. What does being authentic mean to you personally? And how can you define that?
That is such a good question. It's such a deep question. I think it's really, really difficult to put it to words, because authenticity is something that we experience, or the self is something that we experience. It's not something that we understand with our rational mind. It's like we just don't know. We just know when we are around a person, or when we are being our full selves, we know this is who I am. I'm being this. This is who I'm meant to be. And you just kind of get this body feeling, this zing of energy in your body that this is who I am, right? This is my truth. And I think what it means to me to be authentic is following your heart's uncompromised desires. And sometimes people confuse that with emotion, following emotions. And emotion and the heart is completely different. Emotions are just a state of awareness, and it's supposed to tell us, what's going on, and to make us stop and think, okay, do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I need to pay attention to this particular situation I'm in? But the heart is something completely different. The heart is ancient. It's as close as you can get to one's spirit, to their soul, and to their truth, because it's those things that are with you your whole life. You just don't know why, but you're just always drawn to certain things. Certain environments. There are always these recurring desires and dreams that never leave us, these things that we have always wanted, we will always want, and it's our fullest self-expression. It's kind of like being a child in a sense. It's like not immature, but childlike in our purity and our connection to our real spirit, if you were to tune into or reconnect with your inner child and who you have always been, there's this deep, deep sense of knowing and wisdom. And like this, I know that this is what I love doing. This is how I love to operate. These are the things that bring me joy. We just know these things about ourselves and they are unchangeable. It's not like taste or, interests or whatnot. It's really embedded in us. It's like it's an energetic frequency or connection. I hate to use these kinds of terms because most people hear them. I myself had a lot of resistance to these things, like when I started this path, I'm like, I don't want to use words like energy and energetics and whatever. But, it fails me sometimes to find the words to explain these things that I experience because I don't have the vocabulary for it. Maybe other people do, but I'm trying to piece together these mystical experiences and trying to explain them in simple terms. And sometimes that means using words that are a bit poetic, so pardon me if that's not very practical, but, people can experience these things for themselves. This is not a matter of believing. This is a matter of experiencing this. And the key to doing that is really reconnecting to your heart. And that means you care more about what your inner child wants than you care about what's happening in the outer world. That if you had to choose between doing what brings you genuine joy and fulfillment and peace versus doing the thing that's going to make you appear a certain type of way, you're always going to prioritize your genuine emotion, your heart's desires over what you think you should be in order to feel a certain type of way. In other words, you take care of your own or fulfilling your own needs rather than trying to find an indirect way of pleasing the outer world, hoping that the outer world would give you the emotions that you could give yourself and give to your own inner child.
That's awesome. I'm hearing that there's a lot of working processes and intentional belief and thinking throughout the entire process. And can you walk me through maybe a experience when you were younger or that kind of helped you understand as you were linking throughout your entire life journey that says to you, maybe this experience that I'm working on doesn't feel quote unquote authentic to me. Or maybe there is another way where I can be less resistant to these words that may actually be more fulfilling if I used it and embraced it. Can you help me identify that moment in time or those experiences?
Sure. That's such a good question. And, I'm going to take it in a specific direction, but let me know if you had something different in mind. One thing that's very clear to me is when I remember the days when I presented myself as purely just a marketing quote unquote expert, right? Marketing consultant, advisor. My clients were small to medium e-commerce businesses, generally in like a very high growth period. So let's say they're making low 7 figures and they're wanting to get to 8 figures, 9 figures, and that sort of thing. So there were two types of businesses I worked with. There were people who I felt like the CEOs and the CMOs and the people working there were very connected to their hearts. Sorry. And then I felt like I could speak to them, truthfully. We had this trust where I could show up fully and speak the truth of what I think is going on about their situation. And then there were people who are we had a very dry kind of relationship and it was purely transactional, got to make money, that sort of thing. And we don't have like a very high sense of trust. I trust them as human beings. They trust me that I'm an expert and know what I'm doing. Beyond that, there's no sense of vulnerability where we can open up to each other and speak about the truth of what's actually happening. And I found myself, of course, it was very easy for me to talk to the people that I had this vulnerability with because I could be myself. But then in the other situations where I knew they valued me and my knowledge, my left brain, my analytical skills, I was a strategist. Okay, tell us, how are we going to make money? That's what they valued. And there's this other part of me that wants to play, that part of me that's creative, playful, joyful, wants to worry about purpose and passion. I could see that this person really wants to follow their calling, but they're afraid and they're holding back. And I want to encourage them to do that. But we haven't developed this sense of trust. And I haven't really made peace with the fact that I had any emotional side to me or any creative side because I was repressing that part of myself. So I was so judgmental towards myself for being, for having a lot of passion. I was very intense. I hated that about myself. I had gotten feedback that I was too too much, and let's be real, I am sometimes too much, but too passionate, too intense, too this, you're feeling, it can seem like I'm arguing, but really I'm arguing for the person because I care so much. And the poetic side of myself, the artistic side, the creative side, all of these things that made me feel like I was a vulnerable child, I was afraid of. And I felt like I was maybe a little bit crazy, and I talk nonsense about having mystical experiences, and I was too idealistic, which is something I love my mom, but she always told me this as a kid: you dream too much, you're too like you're such a dreamer, you got your head in the clouds, you got to be realistic, all of these things. So those things scared me so much. So it's crazy, but like even as a grown adult, I'm in these like rooms with these people, and I'm like, well, I can't allow myself to be in that space. I have to speak like a left-brained, purely analytical person, because that's what people love about me. That's what I got recognition for. That's what I got reassurance for. So I was afraid that if I showed this other side of myself, I was going to be misunderstood, ridiculed, rejected. And most of all, I was afraid of my own judgment, So those are times when I was not being authentic, because I knew the truth was to tell these clients that, hey, like what you're doing here is not true to you. That's not your truth. That's not what you want to do. But then I wasn't truthful with myself. I wasn't, authentic myself. So how could I expect them to be authentic in their expression in their own business? So that's what opened my eyes and got me to realize, oh, as much as I want them, and I hated doing marketing for businesses that I felt like they weren't connected to the heart, and I noticed the difference that when I'm working with people who are passionate about their business, my passion would be like lit up, and I would get all these creative ideas. And I was like, well, hold on a second. I am not doing that fully in my own work, because I am not being my true self either. Like I am still holding certain parts of myself back. I am trying to be a logical marketer instead of allowing myself to be the marketer that I am, and risk being like seen as a weirdo, wacko, like you don't belong in this, like what are you doing kind of deal. But I had to do that. I had to go through that in order to to be in a situation where I could talk to anybody, no matter where they are, and say, this is how I see things. It's okay if you don't, but this is how I see it, and just be able to hold that ground.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts and so many questions with just that story, because you tied up with your experience with back when society, especially maybe even as a girl, sometimes you get told like you're too much this, you're too much that, right? But I don't know if boys get told that as much, because there's a certain standard for how you're to behave and to act, to be socially accepted, especially in school settings. And then, even sometimes in a cultural setting where you grow up, especially in my case anyway, like, being Asian American, or at least in the Vietnamese background, there's a certain, way of conducting yourself. And sometimes it means you have to be more quiet than other people.
Yeah.
So I was thinking to myself that as you were going about talking regarding your work with your clients and the people, and you were constantly in your head saying, no, this is not authentic to them. How were you able to clearly define that this is not authentic to them? And were people able to recognize that about themselves?
That's a really good question. It's the observation of the person's emotion, their body, their tone of voice, and again, the keyword, their energy, right? When I think everybody has experienced this, where they sit in a room, and there's a certain topic that comes up, and everybody perks up. And it's not because it's gossip or something, like mean or whatever. It's more like, yeah, this idea is really exciting. And there's this sense of aliveness. There's this sense of energy everywhere. Everybody's like, okay, yeah, this resonates with me very deeply. Versus when you're like, yeah, this is what's logical. Mainstream marketing would say that we would have to get this much traffic and convert this many in order to get this many clients. Yeah, okay, this is our goal for Q1. And everybody's like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? There's a difference in the energy when you could feel that the person is coming online, essentially. Like their spirit is like sleeping the entire time, and all of a sudden they perk up, and it's like, what? They're back in the present moment. So I think that's what it is. It's like the state of being in the present moment. Of course, we don't need that to be in the present moment, right? This is a practice that we have to practice, being in the present moment at all times. But this sense that you can sense that the person is there, and you could see the spark in their eyes. And if you're not looking at them, you can hear it in their voice. So I think you can pick it up. That's why I called it Brands Are Alive, because it's literally things that make you feel alive. It's like a sense of aliveness that you get, the jolt of energy that tells you, hey, this is something that's deeply resonant with you, with your soul.
And going back to what you were saying before, the difference between emotions versus your heart, would you say that in this case it's like an alignment between your heart and your emotions, like where you're able to kind of
Absolutely. And that's such a good question, because it's not just the emotions, it's all of the states of awareness. So actually I had like a video I created a long time ago about this topic, about making decisions in alignment, but I touched on this subject, and I learned it from someone. His name is Christopher Witecki, who I, for like my whole life, thought astrology is BS. I don't listen to astrology. I made fun of it. I thought it was this stuff on like Cosmopolitan, whatever. Anyway, so then I spent a year and a half in India back in 2014 to 2017. I was like there for 5 times. I went to a few temples, and I kind of started to understand a little bit what's the origin of this study. I'm not saying that I quote unquote believe in astrology, but this opened my mind a teeny tiny bit to listen to this guy, and his name is Christopher Witecki, and he is a spiritual teacher. And this guy taught me a lot. I learned a lot from his teachings. One of the things he created is called a step system, which enables you to understand different states of awareness. And that validated something that I experienced myself in my meditations and like with psychedelic therapy. I experienced this clear sense of knowing that I am not the body. I am not my mind. I am not my emotions. I am none of these things. These are states of awareness. I have a body, I have a mind, I have emotions, I have this, I have a gut or intuition. So when you're making a decision in alignment, what it means is that all of your states of awareness, that is all parts of yourself, are in alignment with that. And the emotions are one of the greatest ways that you can sense if something is out of order or out of alignment. So yes, there has to be absolutely alignment between the emotion and the heart. But the emotion, the reason why we want to pay attention to it is because it tells us, like, for example, if you're feeling pain, you're like, okay, is this physical or emotional pain? Physical, okay, something is not right in the body. Emotional, oh, I feel something in my guts. I feel like this, I don't know, like a peripheral, something in your peripheral vision where you're driving and you just know that there's something behind you, but you can't see the car. That's your intuition. It's like, there's something there. Those things you start to pick up on, and you start to become more and more sensitive to them. They don't need to be developed. These tools don't need to be developed. They're already there. You don't need to develop your intuition. You don't need to, all you need to do is listen. You need to develop your sense of listening. And that means to stop suppressing or denying. Most people have, not most people, every single person has a very clear intuition. It's just that they deny it. They deny their emotions. They ignore them. And the more you ignore it, the more you dull these senses, and you don't tell the difference. I feel good, I don't feel good. So it becomes hard for you to know the difference. But if you train yourself every day that you listen to how you're feeling, you listen to what you're thinking, your thoughts, your mind, you listen to your body, you listen to, again, your different states of awareness, then it becomes easier for you to pick up if something is out of alignment. Right? Like I can sit with somebody and literally in the conversation, I know right away, this is a yes or a no. It's a very, very clear yes or no. And I have no problem being like, yeah, I know this person is proposing that we can do business together. And this is going to be a very I know logically, this sounds like a very good deal and we should do this together, but something about it is not feeling aligned. I don't try to rationalize it. It's either a yes or a no. I'm not saying people should make decisions just like that. You want to work your way so that you know if this is coming from a bias or not, because sometimes people, when they listen to their emotions or their intuition, especially if they haven't trained themselves to listen to it and don't know the distinction or clear distinction between their own voice versus somebody else's voice, it's easy to fall for bias against somebody just based on their hair color. You're like, I don't want to talk to this person. But it's not that. It's not a rejection. It's more like I don't get a yes, and that means no. I don't get a fuck yes, that means it's no. That's what I mean. It's not like no, 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 no. It's more like, is it a yes for me? Am I opening up to this? Does this feel right? Does it feel aligned? If there's that sense of peace, and the absence of red flags, then that usually means a yes. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying yes, absolutely. You do want to have your emotion and your heart in alignment. You do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. The fact that sometimes people, when they work with you, they're not in alignment, but I'm just wondering to myself if they're even aware of it, or if people, have just kind of rushed into things thinking that they are doing what's best for them because they're just doing it because everyone else is doing it, and they're just like, maybe this will help me up my game or whatever. Like, how can you how do you direct that, or maybe help people kind of break it down for themselves? Let's say if you're now working with them as a client.
That, again, you really ask amazing questions, and I can't believe I forgot to mention this very important state of awareness that I forgot to mention, called the ego. Because we all talk about the ego and we all know what the ego is, but I think the ego gets such a bad reputation. It's not a bad thing. It's one of the states of awareness. We're not supposed to kill the ego. We're not supposed to dismiss the ego. The ego is the sense of separation. It's the thing that gives me an idea that my name is Aleana and I'm a person and I'm separate from you and I'm separate from the listeners, even though we are one. The ego is a beautiful state of awareness that's needed to take action in the physical form. This ego, though, it wants to fulfill what the heart wants, and it wants to fulfill what it wants. So you got to think about these different sides of yourself, like your emotion, your mind, your whatever, as parts of you that they all have their agendas, right? The emotions want to soothe themselves. The mind wants to make sense and have like control. The ego wants to survive. It wants to be safe. So within that agenda of the ego, there's this part of wanting to be bigger, faster, stronger, better. It wants 10 figures yesterday. Like, that's the ego. It just wants, I want to make $1 million by Friday. That's how the ego is. And that's not a bad thing. It's a lot of it comes from the fact that our egos, I mean, what is it? It's like you're wounded and you have all of these, which is very normal, by the way. When I say to people, like, you have this wound around this thing, people think, oh, I'm broken, I need fixing. No, we all have traumas and wounds. That's part of the game that we are playing in this lifetime, is that we explore these parts of ourselves and we work through them. So yeah, to your question, different people have different levels of awareness. Some people come and they're like, I know I have this, and this is what's holding me back. And I know this is coming from this place. And I'm trying to get through it. And some people just literally can't even see it. They don't know it. Like, it's not there. And that's, again, very normal, because I still discover every single day, at least once a day, I'm discovering one thing. Look at that. I have that one thought that's still not very loving. Oh, I have this one thing that's, my ego still needs healing in this area. We all do, but we have to develop the awareness, and we have to love ourselves enough to do the work to heal those things and to move past them. So yeah, different people have different levels of, I don't know if I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think when I follow up with this question, maybe it will answer it a little further. But I'm thinking that there will be people listening who are going to really feel like, I want to speed up this discovery process. If I can figure this out for myself, like, is there even such a thing as speeding it up? And if so, what are those steps to get there?
Okay, that would be a different philosophical conversation for, like, is there such a thing as time? Is there a present, moment, past, future, that sort of thing? I personally think there is time. It's just that there is no past and future. There's only present. That's a different story. Okay, so from like the ego's perspective, I want to speed things up. That's something we all want. We all want things to happen as quickly as possible, right? We have to develop some level of patience and acceptance and surrender. And I know that's like a word that people just throw around all the time, but for a reason, because we don't have control. As much as we have control about everything, quote unquote control, right? Everything is within our power. We have the power to change everything. We have the power to respond to things. We really don't have any control from our physical perspective to decide how the universe is going to work out. Things are just going to happen, right? And we're bound by these physical rules. So this is one of those things that I don't have an answer that's going to please people. Some things are just, if you have a seed, and I always like to use the example of a seed because it drives the point home. This is a seed, and this is the potential for this seed to grow, and it takes this much time, and it needs this environment. You can put it in the right environment, you can water it, you can expose it to the right elements that are going to help, quote unquote, accelerate, and it will, but only up to a certain point, because another part of that seed is completely outside your control, and that's the time that it takes for the seed to unfold. We have to accept that. And if you keep digging every day and you're like, why aren't you growing faster? Well, that's just a waste of energy, and it just doesn't work. So yes, there are things we can do to speed up this process, but sometimes you just have to accept that some things are just not under your control. The one thing you can do to speed up this process is basically develop not just the awareness, but complete acceptance for the truth. The more you resist what is, the more you slow down this process of the acceleration. The faster you can move through things, as in the faster you can accept, okay, this is the reality of how things are. It is what it is. What can I do about it? Instead of using your energy to question it, hate it. Oh, I hate that things are this way, or why aren't they any better? Or you know what I mean? Like using your energy to fight what is and resist what is, instead of being like, this is it. What can I do? If not, can I just accept it? That's the best thing you can do, basically, to speed up this process. If you can be aware and you can accept.
I have a curious question.
Sure.
Would you say that being authentic is people's responsibility?
Everything is our responsibility. And that's not to be confused with like fault, right? Because when people hear responsibility, they're like, oh, you're telling me that all the words are my responsibility? Yes, not your fault, but yes, it is our collective responsibility. Everything is our responsibility. And yes, being authentic, or practicing being authentic is our responsibility. But we don't have to. Nobody has to do anything in this world. It's just that from my experience and from what I've observed about people, the happiest, most fulfilled, most successful people who are able to get what they want in life on their terms are people who have done the work to make peace with who they are and accepted who they are and are working with their nature. Because it's like, if you are water, but you're treating yourself like you are air, imagine the amount of work it takes, to treat water like air and hope to get the same results. It doesn't work, right? That's like putting a cup, like water in a cup and yelling at it. Why aren't you evaporating? You stupid fucking water, when you could just like expose it to heat, but you have to understand its nature and accept it, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. We gotta start, looking into ourselves and who we're about. So how can we maybe use some of those external influencers or influences, and even our internal voice to route ourselves to that place of being authentic?
I think it's really about tuning into how we feel about our environment and being honest with ourselves, that like, I like this, I don't like this, resonates with me, this doesn't resonate with me. I think that's the piece that's missing for most people, and at least for me, when I was kind of figuring out, like, there was a point where I was like, I don't know how to be authentic because I don't know what my true nature is. I don't know who I am. Like, I hear it everywhere, be authentic, but like, it started to sound like such a cliche. It meant nothing to me anymore. It sounded like a feel-good thing. And B, I had no idea how, because I didn't know what my nature is. But then I realized, okay, if you look at nature, why do we say that nature or something is natural or like nature? Because nature is expressing itself with no agenda. It just is what it is, and it's not doing it for you, for me, for anybody, or for anything other than for existing for the sake of existing, or expressing for the sake of expressing. So that's what it means to be natural, is to be in that spontaneous space of, this is the best, most beautiful I can create, be, have, do, because that's who I am. And I am enjoying my existence. I am just being and not trying to be something for somebody else. using quote unquote influencers and other like things outside of ourselves, I'm not a huge fan. I think there's a lot of value in looking at people that you admire and asking yourself, what do I admire about this person? Because the thing is, if you admire something about them, that means there's something in you that you're recognizing in that person. They're showing you something about yourself, you know. But sorry, there's a lot of noise in the background, right?
I can't hear it.
Okay, good. Are you gonna be able to cut this part? It's fine if you leave it, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
that's fine.
Okay. You know, I think that it's good to look at the world and look at other quote unquote influences and see how we can get inspiration, because that reflects something within ourselves. But it's not like this person has the answer for me or this person has the answer for me. Once you get on this path, it's very easy to feel like this person is going to be my savior. And yes, these people can help you, the next step or the next stage of your life. But at the end of the day, it's really all within. Like, the truth is, nobody needs any quote unquote guide, teacher, mentor. But we are, because everybody is supposed to be both the teacher and a student in this life. You learn from some people, you teach other people, and we exchange knowledge. That's how it is. But I don't want people to offload their inner guidance to someone out there and look at them and go, okay, that person has all the answers. That person is going to show me how, tell me who am I, what is my true nature? And I get this sometimes, I get this on calls. I remember this man asked me, he's like, who should I be in my brand? And I was like, I will never answer that question for you. I will help you figure that out for yourself, but I will never tell you who you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to show up in the world. That's not my work. That's your work,
Then what would you say next after that in order to get that person to the next step?
What would I say is what? I'm sorry?
Yeah, what would you say to someone who asked that question of who can I be with my brand, or how can I express myself in the world, kind of thing? Like, what would be their next step, or how can you guide that person?
Well, I mean, that's definitely the work that I do. And that's the joy of doing this work, of helping people figure out, what is it that gives me that sense of aliveness, and how do I recognize that? How do I recognize my own voice versus other people's voices? How can I find that balance between being quote unquote authentic and my full self-expression, and also at the same time expanding and growing? Because the truth is, a lot of times we just don't like how we are, and being authentic doesn't mean I have to accept this is how I am and this is how I am showing up in the world, and therefore I have to like it. It's okay to not like certain things about ourselves, but we have to love ourselves. Love and like are different things. You can love someone or something unconditionally, but not like a few things and want to change them and want to develop them, but from a place of complete acceptance and love. So that's the work that I do. And I think that for them to start moving in that direction, it's really all about listening into those desires and acting on them. The work happens when you start going in that direction and you start getting all these blind spots and ideas and parts of you that are telling you can't do it, and sabotaging yourself and forgetting, how to go in that path, the fear that comes up. All of the work, that needs to be done internally happens while you are in the process of pursuing your things. That's why when I work with people, I don't just go, okay, here, let's talk about all of your wounds and problems and and then goodbye. Like, it's all targeted towards a goal. We start with the goal, with the end goal. In the physical world, this is what we want to create. For example, this is a project that I want to create, like this guy. This is the thing that I want to create. This is a project that I am building right now. Now, when I go in this direction, what are the fears, the traumas, the blocks, the inner blocks that come up? And then we work through those things along the way. And that takes, this self-awareness part that we talked about, as well as the willingness to see the truth of how things really are, love oneself, love everything and accept it, and at the same time work on changing it. Because this is the part that people struggle with, is that we have been conditioned for so long to only make changes when I hate this and I want to change it. Okay, for example, I hate my body, I want to change my body. But that's like trying to run away from something, only keeps recreating more of it. You have to love it and accept it and make peace with it and feel grateful for it, while at the same time having the desire for something quote unquote better and working towards the thing that is better. So that's how I would tell them to approach it, you know.
Yeah. I guess I'm imagining that like part of it is like kind of look at yourself hard in the mirror, like really like telling yourself like I love myself, or taking out a notebook and writing down like who you are, what you want to be, or what you want to work on, as a goal, and then kind of sharing that with you, and bounce back ideas to learn more and get feedback, because sometimes people they're lost in their own paradigm, and they're thinking from their perspective or standpoint, this is who I am, this is who I've always been. But in a way, working with you, like as a coach or like a mentor, or maybe like, someone who knows a lot about brands and marketing, that it's really important to create an identity that you can own, that you'll be proud of, right? That you can say is going to last for years to come, because and as your brand kind of your work on personal brands is like that brands are constantly evolving, that's alive in that sense, because we are accepting that part of ourselves, like all the the past to the present, and kind of how we want to cultivate ourselves in a changing, transforming world. So we kind of have to transform ourselves in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you touched on that's spot on. The fact that it's evolving, it's always growing, it's always evolving, it's always expanding. So even though we're creating a quote unquote brand identity, by the way, the thing is, and this is something that I struggled with a lot when I was starting out, because I had to undo all of the thinking from like marketing and branding, right? And at the same time, I mean, I'm not necessarily like, I don't call myself a coach, because I don't know, like what I do is more of an in between those two things of like mentorship, mentoring people, and the strategic branding and marketing. So it's like some weird place that's combination of branding, marketing, and spiritual creative practice. And I find that a lot of people have this struggle, because they're like, well, I want to be like unique and different, and I want to stand out, and I want but I also don't want to be fake, and I also don't want to be too much, I don't want to try hard. And it's like, you don't have to, because the fun thing is, once you start allowing yourself to be your full self-expression and bringing all parts of yourself, by default, you're going to create something incredibly unique and actually stands out in the market, So it would be because of the intersection of your passions, your interests, your disciplines, your knowledge, your life experience, crystallized into something that's useful, into something that helps people gain a certain result, it is going to stand out by default, and you don't have to try. And anytime you try, when you're trying to stand out, is when you end up blending in. Where you try to be something unique is when you end up actually being like everybody else. It's very paradoxical. When you try to have powers, when you lose all of it, it's like everything, as weird as this going to sound, everything you want to have, you have to let go of. That's how you get it, by not being overly attached to it. And and this building of a brand of full self-expression is one of those things. I never advise anybody. I just had a call right before our podcast with someone. We talked for a little over an hour, and as I'm listening to myself telling him what the next steps are for the strategy for like moving towards the thing that he wants to build, I'm like, I can't believe I'm telling him to do these things, because my past self as a strategist would have been like, beep boop, 1, 2, 3, you got to do this, and then this, and then this. And I'm like, no, you got to start with the daydreaming first. I want you to dream as much as possible, and then we're going to do this, 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 and this, So it's like, yeah, it's like a very, yeah, but that's very different from how most quote unquote marketing consultants and experts and people approach branding and marketing. But I didn't do it because I was trying. And what I noticed is that the more you bring of your truth, your quirks, the things that make you different, the things that you may even consider to be your weaknesses, if you can alchemize them, if you can heal them, and if you can balance them, that's what's going to, to create something that's so authentic and true and fully uniquely yours.
Aleana, I thought it was really awesome that you touched upon the idea of letting go. And even as you were talking and sharing your story, I realized that some of those letting go moments is letting go what people told you who you were and growing up, or what they were kind of projecting upon you, saying this is you, but really maybe it's them in their own situation. And I also was thinking, to tie it up, is the story of how your mom was saying, like, you're too idealistic and like you're always dreaming and everything like that. Like, you in a way, you're kind of bringing all that back. How did you confront all of those beliefs in order to, I guess I call it quieting the noise, or like undoing the work? Like, how did you go about determining who you really are?
As far as quieting those things, I didn't try to quiet them as much as I was like, yes, and it's like, okay, I agree, fine. Like, I tried to reject that for so long. At first, I tried to reject it, right? I was like, I am not this. I'm not idealistic. I'm not allowing these things to. I have to change and be this instead. And then it was, okay, if I'm gonna be this, I still have to like prove to myself that this is okay, or that I am not too idealistic. I'm gonna allow myself to do it, but I'm not so idealistic. I'm not crazy. Lately, I literally was like, you know what? I am crazy. Like, I'm accepting it fully, completely. I may be a little bit bonkers. I may be a little bit out there. I might be a little bit too idealistic. Yes, I am. Cool. All right. And, like in my walks, in my morning walk one day, like a mad woman, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I am this. And my judging mind is like, it's not that my mind, but like the judge in my mind, or the judging voice is like, go in. Like, that day I allowed it to just go, like, and just to release everything that it needed to say. And I was like, yeah, that's true. Cool. And you're cringy. And I'm like, yeah, and I am cringy, and I create cringe content. And there was so much judgment, right? Oh, you sound so silly. You're so stupid. Okay, fine. Okay, cool. Great. That's true. I agree. And I was just agreeing with all of it, but really like considering it like a joke, not necessarily taking it seriously. Like, that's the truth. It's more like, it's a thought. It's a perception, So, I mean, different people deal with it in different ways. That doesn't work for everybody. Obviously, it doesn't work when you're like, if you're still entangled very much with your mind, and you think that who you think you are is who you are, and your perception of yourself is true, then that can be harder to untangle. But it's really about being okay with being that way and loving it. And I keep bringing it back to love, because that's really the answer to everything. It's like loving something as it is, or accepting it as it is. Love doesn't mean liking. This is the reason why people have such a hard time with the idea of love. And the best way I can explain it in like simple terms for anyone who's like, you know what, just give me like the too long didn't listen type of deal. How do I learn to love the unlovable? Is to understand the thing, is to understand it and its function. So for example, if I'm looking at my belly and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a six-pack. I want a six-pack. Why do I have this little pouch that won't go away? How do I love that? Well, you love it by understanding that there's nothing wrong with the body. The body is very smart. It's not thinking about you in a bikini. It's thinking about survival and keeping you in your optimal shape. And so it's like, okay, you ate enough, but I'm going to store this as fat for your survival. You see the beauty in that. You understand the function of that, and that this thing is allowed to exist regardless of your freaking opinion. That it doesn't need to be the way you want it to be. It doesn't need your acceptance to exist. Once you stop expecting it to be the way you like it so that you would like it, then you're like, oh, look at that. I can also be whatever way I want to be and not have to please me in order for me to exist. It's crazy, but really you have to stop caring about what you think about yourself. You know what I mean? And like I started with thinking the only opinion that matters is my own opinion of myself. That is true. And also sometimes my opinion of myself doesn't matter. It matters to me more than anything that I think, for example, that the content that I create is good and valuable. If I think it's good and it's helping, that's the most important thing. Okay, it's more important than somebody else validating it. But also, it's more important that I create the thing that's an expression of who I am, even if I think it's oh, that's, I cringe that I'm going to talk about this topic, or I cringe when I look at myself in the camera and I don't like this part, or I don't like how my voice is sounding in this particular thing. And be like, okay, you know what? It doesn't matter what I think about it. And that's not to dismiss myself. That's like, okay, you're allowed to think that and to feel that. You're allowed to do that. And I am allowed to exist and be the way I am and express myself. I don't have to reach this perfection, this place of perfection before I can just be,
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna start wrapping it up, and I would love for you to share maybe 2 or 3 key steps or advice that people who are working on their career path, maybe who are, women or looking to be an entrepreneur or switch over to something they are passionate about, or even starting their own brand. What are some of those steps or advice you can give?
It's funny that you said women, because you believe it or not, most of the people that reach out to me are actually men who are struggling with this, because they also struggle with this. Like, this is such a common thing for people who are connected to their hearts, to judge this about themselves and not know where to get started. It depends on where they are, right? So are we talking about people who have clarity about what they want to do in their career, or somebody who has no idea? Or you just want in general for
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a bit general, because there are going to be people working on themselves, and sometimes they're gonna be like, I really don't like my job. And I think there must be something I could do that will help me have a fulfilling life. And or some people who are like, I really love my job, but there's still something missing, like I could be doing. How can you address to, those thoughts to people like that?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is do a brain dump of everything that brings you this feeling of aliveness and joy. So that could be textures, colors, shapes, activities, tasks. Think of the things that bring you joy. Look at where are you spending your extra money. Go check out your YouTube or whatever history, and like, what videos do you watch in your free time? Think about your favorite movie, like movie characters. What is it that you like about them? Think about the people that you admire, or you like their work. What is it about them or the work that they do that you love? At this stage, you shouldn't worry about how am I going to make money out of this, or how am I going to integrate this into a business or anything. At this stage, you're just reconnecting with this sense of aliveness and joy, and reactivating this part of yourself. Because I know when we spend so much of our time wanting to please the outer world and wanting to be a certain type of way in order to be accepted, we start to forget what it feels. We don't even know what do we want. Like, you're like, I don't have no idea. What am I passionate about? What do I love? I have no idea. So we have to reconnect with that. When you do that, you start to notice some patterns. Oh, these are my values. These are the things that I enjoy. Maybe I enjoy, beauty and peace and whatever. Oh, I like, I don't know, excitement. I like adventure. You start to get the feeling, okay, the vibe. Oh, one thing I like to do, actually, and I always recommend this, do a mood board. This is something that we grab from branding, a little tip. When you're trying to get the vibe or the energy of a brand, you do a mood board and you put together images that you think are representing the idea. And it could be colors, it could be things. And then when you look at it, you're like, oh, I get this. Like, I understand what this is all about. And you start to see, oh, I really like, I don't know, luxury and elegance and whatnot. And this is not like superficial stuff. The reason why we're trying to dig into these things is because we're wanting to be like an anthropologist, kind of going back to, throughout my life, what are the threads? There are clues, and the clue is the feeling of interest, curiosity, desire, playfulness, expansion, where it's like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I really like these colors. I really like these countries. I really like this kind of sound. For me, I'll tell you, for me, what's really important is peaceful mornings and having a lot of space in the morning to do nothing and just look at the freaking sunrise. I love that. That's very important to me, that nourishes my soul. It sounds unrelated to your work, but it's everything, because when you reconnect with that, now when you go sit down and do a task, you're like, this is out of alignment. This doesn't feel right. This, I like this. I don't like this. Why don't I like this? Well, it irks me that maybe, this person, the way they speak, oh, I don't like being in kind of environments where I speak to this kind of personality, without judgment, without hate, without rejection. It's just observation. That's where I would start. And that's a very, very, very basic fundamental level. Okay. Now you're starting to do more of the things that bring you joy, and you will realize that you already know what tasks you like and what kind of work you like and what kind of work you don't like. I think a mistake we make is we try to define this with the mind. So we're starting out and we have no idea what we want to create, and we want to have a very clear vision of this is the business, and here's the business plan, and here's how I'm going to get there. And sometimes that's not how it works. Sometimes you kind of have to just go in the general direction of the thing. So you don't know what you're trying to create at the end. You have no idea what it is, let alone like how you're going to get there. But you know, I have this vision. I want to feel this way. This is how I want to feel every single day. I would also advise them to journal, like, what's an ideal day in 5 years? If you were to imagine a perfect day from beginning to end, how would you be spending your time and energy and money and everything? Where would you be? How would you be living? Those things will give you clarity about the kind of life that you want to design. And you may not have the perfect clarity of what exactly you want to create, but you can do one thing in the next 24 hours that can move you in that direction. And I always say, like, if you just do one thing in the next 24 hours, and you repeat that every single day, someday you're going to wake up and you're going to be in that destination. But where we get stuck is we're like, I don't know what to do in the next 24 hours. And that means you're still thinking too big. Maybe your next step is to do a little bit of research. Maybe your next step is to, I don't know, register a podcast name and start brainstorming some podcast ideas. Something in that direction. Be willing to try. Oh, here's another tip. And I'm sorry that I'm throwing like different tips with no organization, but this is keeping it general, right? Like this is, I'm assuming somebody has no clue, nothing, like very basic stuff, not going to go like super advanced and confuse people. When I work with someone one-to-one, it's a lot more targeted and like specific to them. And they have like a 1, 2, 3 step-by-step. But one thing I advise also in general is just try different projects instead of an entire business. If you have no idea, like say you just don't like the job and you want to escape into something different. A project or a series of little projects is something you can execute on in the next couple of months. You can try it for 1 month or 2 months and see how it goes. Like a podcast, like a series of YouTube videos, like a website, like try to do one workshop instead of thinking, oh, here's the big picture business model. And again, this is not about you can't think big picture. You should be like, allow yourself to dream of what you want to create in the next 25 years if you want to. My vision for Brands Are Alive is not even decades. I'm talking like hundreds of years. Like literally, I want to create something that's going to last long, long, long after we're gone. But when it comes to taking action, it only happens in 24-hour compartments. There's only today, right here, right now, what's in front of me. And I think no matter where you are, what stage in your business or in your life, the action always happens here and now. And if you can't take the action today, then what's the freaking point? You have to break it down. No matter how big or small you think, you always have to bring it down to today, 24 hours. What am I going to do today that's going to put me in that direction? But what happens for most people is we obsess over having clarity and reassurance about the entire path. We want to know that everything we're going to do is going to take us somewhere we want to go. We want that reassurance because that's the life that we've been conditioned to live. You know, go to school, get a job, etc., get married, have 2.5 kids, etc., etc. So anyone who deviates from that path is creating a path that doesn't exist. And that's very scary, but the rewards are really infinite. So those are just some general tips I'd give to someone who's just starting out. And, you know, again, it really depends on the person, but it comes down to reconnecting with yourself, with what brings you joy, and having the courage to, and the self-love, really, more than courage, is like loving yourself enough to trust yourself and trust that you deserve for you to fight for the things that you want and to go after it, you know, today and here and now, essentially.
Yeah, it's super beautiful just like listening to you talk. You have a very captivating presence.
Thank
so you. To give you the final question, who or what inspires you?
My younger self when I was 13 years old. I have this ring I'm a married woman, so I always wear at least one ring on this one. But this is the ring that I used to wear when I was 13. And when I was a 13-year-old, I had a very rough childhood. I have very, very, very difficult childhood. But I decided I was going to pick myself up and I was going to be strong for myself, and I was going to pursue what I want. I was very hard-headed and but when I think of who I was when I was younger, I see my truth. Like that's who I was. I don't know. Again, this is why I said earlier in the conversation that sometimes, like, it's not sometimes, always, who we are is not something that we can explain with the mind. It's something that we experience. And I have this clear sense of who I was when I was a child and who I was as a teenager. Hello, kitty. And that is my inspiration, because like the courage that this kid had, to step up and to go after what she wanted in life is something that I really, really look up to. So yes, there's that. And then also I look up to many other people. Michael Jackson was my childhood hero. I just remember seeing him on, and I know some people are going to be triggered because of all the stories. I don't fucking care. I'm just talking about the character, right? Like Michael Jackson, at least who I saw someone whose inner child was very well alive and still there, someone who's very connected to their spirit as a creative. I just remember seeing him on the stage and just being jolted and being like, that adult really gets it. He is still connected to his inner child. I had a professor in university. Her name is Rose Rappaport. She died in 2007, but she was one of the most impactful people that I met, and one of the earliest influences that really helped me make sense of life in a very difficult time. So I'm forever grateful to this woman. Gosh, I could go on and on and on. I mean, I have so many people in my life, my husband, so many people that I look up to and that have made a huge difference in my life. So
yeah, no, as you were just talking, I was getting the chills because I was like, how much gratitude you have for the people around you, and the way you express it is just extraordinary, because I think there are times when we kind of forget to give thanks to the people who have helped us get to where we are today, and even your younger self, so making those bold choices to believe in, the only person that maybe other people didn't believe in, but like you did that for yourself. So kudos to you. And you are here today. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. And so I would love for people to know where they can find you or follow you.
I like to create videos with advice for soulful entrepreneurs who are integrating all parts of themselves, who want to live with passion and purpose and have financial profitability at the same time. So I create videos as much as I can, and I think the best place is to sign up for the newsletters, because that's where I send my weekly mojo. It's brandsarealive.com/newsletters, or you can go where the newsletters are and just put your email. I try not to spam people, so I usually only send one email per week. So hopefully that's not as disruptive as and I try to send things that I hope are helpful. So yeah,
yeah,
that's the best place.
Yeah, and definitely give Aleana some feedback, because I'm sure it's not as disruptive as she might think. Maybe it's more helpful than she thought. So.
Thank you. I think that's the thing is, we can always. The thing about being helpful is that we can have all the right intentions, but there's so much knowledge out there. I don't want to give people just more knowledge, more things to know, but hopefully things that they can apply in their current situation. So that's what I always aim to do with these videos, is one thing that they can do that week that will help them get closer to their goals, something that they can apply, and at the same time help them make sense of the madness that is branding and marketing and business for somebody who is connected to their soul. Because I think there is a space for those of us who don't want to live on the mountain and levitate and meditate all day and stuff, but also don't want to be money grubbing, sell our souls to make some money. There's the newsletter, and there's also, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. So those are places, but newsletters is the best place.
Yeah, so definitely make sure you stay connected to Aleana, get into her YouTube, at least take away one tip, at least from this episode, or go onto her shows and see what she has to offer there. So I hope this was really great for everyone who's listening. And thank you, Aleana, for coming on to take part of this experience and share your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much.